In this video, we are going to directly compare the Rupert Neve MBT hardware versus the new Kiive Audio Nfuse plugin. Now, I haven't compared the fusion aspect of it because I don't no longer have a SSL fusion, but I do have the MBT down there. So I'm comparing the MBT hardware to plugin, and I've gone through each section. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you each section: saturation, compression, EQ, and widening. And I'll give you my thoughts as we go through each one. Now, high quality audio examples, there's a link in the description, are on the website. You can jump between A to B on this nice little player that flips instantly, so you can get a real good understanding. And these are all WAV samples that you're streaming back. So let's start off by looking at the EQ. As you can hear there, it's not a direct emulation, is it? It's, you know, they sound very different. Look, they do. The thing with it is if you were using that plugin, you maybe wouldn't dial it in as hard. The MBT hardware sounds smooth. The plugin sounds quite brittle and harsh in the top end. Now, that's my takeaway from that. So let's move now on to what I do think is incredible about the plugin, and that is the saturation. So looking at the saturation there, it's close, it's very close. And that's good, that's really good, because that's what's great about the MBT hardware, is that saturation that you get from Silk Red and Silk Blue. So being able to capture that in a plugin, that's brilliant. Now there's a tiny difference. There is, now, no matter how people will like to comment and say, there's a huge difference. It's not huge, it's not huge at all. There's a subtle difference there, but it's close enough for a plugin. A plugin has captured what that MBT can achieve. So let's now move on to the widening. So now comparing the widener, there's differences, but they're not bad differences. I mean, you've got a plug-in there that, well, it widens the sound. Brilliant. It does sound good, and you'll use it slightly different to how you'd use the hardware. The hardware, it sounds a bit smooth. It sounds analog. You know, one sounds digital, one sounds analog. Of course it does. One is digital, one is analog. So there are differences there, but they're not bad differences. I don't find this to be bad difference. This is a good plugin that has a good widener on it, albeit that the widener that's on the Fusion isn't, you know, it's not nothing special. It's not the best widener in the world. It's a good widener. The plugin also sounds equally as good, but there's differences. It's not technically an emulation. I don't see this plugin as a direct emulation of the MBT hardware. So let's now move on to the compressor and check that one out. So there we have the compressor. There's a fair amount of difference there, and I think we can all agree on that. But the thing with the MBT is I don't particularly like the compressor that's on it. So the difference is there. The plugin could actually be better. Now, look, when I use the plugin, I'm not using the compressor. I'm using other compressors. But if you didn't have a compressor, it's going to be a cool compressor. The compressor, there's nothing wrong with the compressor that's in the plugin. The hardware compressor, I don't particularly like it. So I'm not too fussed that there's differences there, me personally. What I'm focused on is that saturation, and that's what's really close. So let's now compare a full track running through, and what I've done here is I've put in the exact same settings, and we're going to compare A to B. We're going to go from the EQ is active, saturation is active, and the widening is active. I've left the compressor off because I don't particularly like the compressor on the hardware or the plugin, so I'm not even going to put that on. At the end of the day, these tests I'm doing as much for me as I am for you. So I'm looking at it how I want to work with it, and I would work with it only using the EQ, the EQ, the saturation, and the widening. So I'm testing this. So here what I've done is I've applied the exact same settings on the hardware and on the software, and let's see how they compare. Now, to be honest, when comparing those two, I actually prefer the plugin. I actually prefer the sound of the plugin there, which is great. And look, here's the thing, is there are differences. They do sound different. The EQ is very different. So when putting in these settings, they do sound very different. So I find that's a positive towards the plugin. Again, it's not technically, I don't see this as a direct emulation. So what I've done next is, using Plugin Doctor, what I've done is I've matched identically the curve that we just listened to. So I've matched that curve with the hardware, changed the hardware settings to match it. Now the settings needed changing, the filter needed a bit of adjustment, and the EQ needed a bit of adjustment. The saturation didn't need any adjusting, which is good. And this is the thing, this is what I actually want to emulate in the box. I want that silk red and silk blue in the box. That's where it's really excelling in this example. So I've matched them identically. So what we should be able to hear here is a closer representation of analog and hardware actually sounding very similar. So in that example, you do get a lot closer. Now, one thing that's always the case with comparing any plugin to any piece of hardware is the hardware always sounds smoother. It sounds a lot smoother, a lot less harsh on the ears, and it fuller, rounder low end. Now, these are all buzzwords that you use when describing analog, and it can't be truer to a fact when comparing plugin to hardware. Look, the plugin sounds brilliant. The plugin captures what is great about that, and that is that saturation. So I really, really like the plugin, and I'm not just saying this. I actually do genuinely like the plugin. I use the plugin. It's now what I use to apply Silk Red and Silk Blue saturation in all my mixes. I think it's brilliant, and it does sound great. And here's the thing with these plugin versus hardware comparisons is, if you never heard what the Fusion sounds like and you picked up this plugin and started using it, you'd go, yeah, this sounds great. And it does sound great. Is it a direct emulation? No, it's not a direct emulation. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because take the plugin for what the plugin is. The plugin is a high and low shelf EQ. It's got a filter, it's got compression, it's got stereo widening, and it's got saturation. It's good. You can't complain with it as a plugin. If you take it away from what the hardware is, just look at it as a plugin, the plugin is good, especially the saturation. So this is my honest thoughts on the plugin, and you know, I love the plugin. It's made it into my workflow, and I've got maybe 20 plugins that I will use all the time, and this is one of them. And that's a real good thing, and that you know, that says everything you need to know. I use it, I love it, I think it's good, but it is not a 100% or even 95% direct emulation of the MBT hardware.